England, and this mass of showery rain will move from Northern Ireland, Western Scotland towards the east. Now, across England and Wales, the most frequent bursts will be down towards the southwest, where we'll see the odd heavier one, but the winds won't be as strong as Wednesday. Even so, these showers could be heavy, some sunshine in between. Temperatures not as high either. Now, through Thursday evening, we'll see a lot of those showers ease. Could even see the risk of some ice across the far northeast of Scotland as rain returns to Northern Ireland. This rain is heavy. In fact, the Met Office has issued a warning for heavy rain across central and southern parts of Scotland into Friday. Again, the risk of some snow over the higher ground as thickening cloud on Friday brings further spells of wet weather towards Wales, the West Country, as the winds pick up some strength. So let's have a look at that rain as it tracks across England and Wales. More rain across Scotland and Northern Ireland, clearing Northern Ireland later on in the day, feeling cold in that wind under all that cloud. And here's your outlook into the New Year weekend. We lose the strength of the wind, we gain some drier skies, but always a chance of some rain in the southeast on Sunday.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tonight on Farage, are the energy companies literally robbing their customers? We'll talk about the tax situation, what are the Tories thinking? We'll look at a worsening situation in Ukraine. And joining me on Talking Pints, former Chelsea owner Ken Bates, a man never shy of giving an opinion. All of that comes up after the news headlines with Ray Addison.
Thanks, Nigel. Here's the latest from the GB Newsroom. 2 men have been arrested on suspicion of murder in connection with the stabbing of a 23-year-old man in a Birmingham nightclub. Semi-professional footballer Cody Fisher was stabbed to death on the dance floor of the Crane nightclub on Boxing Day. Hundreds of people were there at the time. His family say their hearts were broken following his death. West Midlands police say a 22-year-old man was arrested in Birmingham city centre last night. The 21-year-old was arrested in London. Police are appealing for any information on the weapon used in a shooting which killed a 26-year-old on Christmas Eve in Wirral. Merseyside police say they're working to establish whether it could be connected to any other incidents in the area. Beautician Elle Edwards was fatally shot at the Lighthouse Inn. A man remains in critical condition. 2 people have been arrested in connection with that incident. Border Force staff and driving examiners are the latest to stage industrial action. Members of the PCS union working at multiple UK airports are continuing their strike over pay, jobs and conditions. Driving examiners have begun a 5-day walkout, affecting more than 70 test centres in the east of England and the Midlands. Former Border Force Chief Kevin Saunders told us airport disruption has been minimal.
It would seem that the government have got away with this. Military people will not be doing the more involved people from abroad. They'll probably be only handling the Brits, which is probably 95% of the traffic anyway. So, but Border Force have got away with it this time round.
Pope Francis has asked for prayers for his predecessor, former Pope Benedict, saying he's very sick. The Vatican says the 95-year-old had a sudden worsening of his health, but is receiving constant medical care. The former head of the Catholic Church became the first pope in 600 years to resign when he stepped down in 2013. And provisional Met Office figures show 2022 has been the warmest year on record. By the end of December, experts say we'll have seen the highest annual average temperature. It'll beat the record set in 2014 of just under 10 degrees Celsius. Met Office says every month, apart from December, has been warmer than average. On TV, online and on DAB+ radio, you're watching GB News. Back now to Nigel Farage.
Good evening. They made it much harder for us to pay by cheque. Quite difficult sometimes to pay by telephone. Yes, what the energy providers did was to basically bully us into having direct debits. But I'll bet very few of you who signed up to those direct debits read the pages and pages of small print because of all the accompanying legislation. Got to tell you, I, for one, most certainly didn't. And now we learn that the direct debits can go up, even way above our actual energy consumption. And now the energy companies have built up a positive cash balance of £2 billion worth of our money. I find the situation almost unbelievable. Surely we're used in life to paying for what we use, for paying for what we need. And yet it's almost like having an open bank account. This has been done with very little debate, with very little discussion, and virtually no comment in public at all from Ofgem, who was supposed to be the regulator looking after our interests. I'm pretty annoyed about it because it comes at a time when people genuinely are strapped for cash. So our debate this evening, to kick the show off with, is, are the energy providers literally robbing their consumers? Let me know your thoughts. Farage at gbnews.uk. Well, Clive Moffat joins me, former head of UK Energy, a regular on this programme. Clive, over the last year, we've discussed many of the problems in the energy sector. We've talked about supply, price, many other things. But this must come for a lot of people as a bit of a shock. I made the point to begin that when you sign up for a direct debit, you don't read the reams and reams of small print. So what's actually going on here?
I think the energy suppliers are basically doing what they can to protect their own cash flows and their own liquid assets. And they quite like the idea that they can get away with that. But the point is that Ofgem is the weak point here. Ofgem, I think, have failed in the last 2 or 3 years to have really effective regulation of the retail sector. And it started really with the expansion in competition, which shouldn't have been allowed to happen. With a lot of companies coming in, not having enough resources to withstand the volatility in wholesale gas prices, and we saw a lot of them go bust. And since that point, Ofgem have been very embarrassed, and in some ways, if you like, have become more prone towards the needs of the suppliers than they have the customers.
Well, I agree with that. But you say go bust. You know, in a free market, firms going bust is part of capitalism. But in this case, actually, the bill has been taxpayer funded, hasn't it?
Exactly. The bill under the it gets picked up. All the other customers get transferred to other suppliers, and the bill has become enormous. I mean, it's almost very embarrassing for Ofgem to be, for the accounts for bulb, for example, to show that there's going to be a loss of upwards of 4 billion, which is going to have to be paid for by consumers. And I think both consumers and taxpayers, same people, have been basically not treated well. I think Ofgem have not done a good job. They allowed the energy cap to be changed every 3 months instead of every 6. They've supported the idea of government coming in and underpinning a minimum price to consumers by basically underpinning suppliers' cash flows of the difference between what they could charge and what they were having to pay for wholesale gas in the market. And in some ways, all of these things, even the so-called flexibility scheme introduced by National Grid recently, which hasn't been really worked properly, is basically linked about customers who have to be on meters. And it's been to some extent engineered in such a way that the suppliers effectively get the money. The question is, does all that money necessarily get transferred back to the customer?
Well, I wonder
if they turn the kettle off when National Grid want them to.
You see, I wonder about all of this. Now, you mentioned Ofgem, and in response to this story breaking in the news yesterday, Ofgem have responded by saying that they concluded that completely ring-fencing credit balances, that's the money being held, our money being held by the energy suppliers, I'll say it again, completely ring-fencing credit balances would remove a large piece of working capital that would keep prices down for customers. So they're basically arguing that it's a good thing. I mean, I thought they were there for us, the consumer. They're arguing it's a good thing that these people have positive advance payments from us. How on earth is this allowed?
I totally agree with that. I said on this programme, I think some time ago, that in fact what the suppliers should be asked to do in these circumstances is actually be effectively give credit to consumers by offering them deferred payments, not exactly stashing up their own credit balances. And I think on top of this, customers are aware that as taxpayers, they're bailing out these suppliers with huge amounts of money so that the cap can be maintained until next April or whenever it's going to be reviewed.
Are we really not saying that much of this is caused by the introduction of caps a few years ago?
I think a lot of the problems were the decision to actually introduce a cap. But I also think the problems go back further than that. I mean, I remember years ago, almost 10 years ago, in a debate across the road here, talking about the need, do we need more competition? And the governments were obsessed about having more competition. We already had probably six or eight competitors in the retail market. And the Ofgem took the decision to almost open the door to all comers. Anybody who had a respectable piece of consumer billing software could come into the market. No proper checks were done, and Jonathan Brearley and his team have now admitted that they didn't do proper checks.
No, cowboys, basically.
Yeah, they're not doing checks now. They're not looking at those balance sheets and saying, what's the proportion of credit, consumer credit, as a proportion of liquid assets of these organisations? Well, we're basically allowing them to sustaining their position at the expense of consumers. So I think we need to get to a position, once this cap thing gets reviewed and hopefully is removed, we're getting back to a market operation. Then I think we seriously need to, and probably before that, look at whether or not Ofgem has fit for purpose.
Well, I agree with that. Now, what about people at home? Clive, this is really important because times are tough. I bet there's hardly a family Christmas where November's bill wasn't discussed, particularly for those on meters, because they were seeing double the bills they had in October.
Exactly.
I bet this was discussed as much as the King's speech was discussed around, the Christmas lunch table. So people can check their situation, can't they, with their provider? They can email them, they can ask them for an update on their account. And if they find that they actually have a credit that is lodged with that provider, they can ask for the money back.
Yes, they'd be having to do the job of the supplier by calculating what they've used relative to what they've paid, and why should they be asked to do that if they're already paying? for a service which they're not getting. And I think, I mean, the other thing that I think that needs to be done, we've been told there's going to be a public information campaign to 25 million quid to try and help people adjust their demand in this situation. And we've seen nothing of that seriously, and I think the suppliers should be basically told that they're going to have to fund that.
They are, but they can request a refund. That's the important thing.
Indeed.
You know, and Ofgem, to be fair to Ofgem, do put this on their website, but they haven't exactly advertised it. So what I want to say to people, particularly those who are, you know, facing very, very tough times, is get in touch with your supplier, see if you have a positive balance with them. It may mean checking a meter. If you're on a smart meter, they'll know already. And if you have a positive cash balance, you can ask for it to be returned to you. If you have any difficulty with that provider in them not paying you that money back, then get in touch with this programme, farage@gbnews.uk, and I promise you, we will get those suppliers jumping around a bit with the threat of going to the Ombudsman. Clive, sticking with the whole energy side of things. Ursula von der Leyen, the unelected leader of the European Commission, said the other day that we're going to set a cap on what we're going to pay Russia for oil. A comment on that and Putin's response.
Well, first of all, that is, you know, most analysts, economists would agree, it's a global price for oil, it's a global market for oil. And no subsection of the world market could try and impose a cap about what it's prepared to pay. It may go without getting any oil as the outcome of that. Yeah. And they would have to look at the internal implications of that for their economies and consumers, obviously. No, I just don't see that as happening. Neither did I see before, some months ago, when they were trying to put an embargo on importation of gas. I mean, that didn't really work either. And I think this whole thing about Europe trying to barricade itself in a way is not going to help with prices. It's certainly not going to help consumers.
But it's also filled with contradictions, because we learn now that France is importing even more natural gas from Russia than the Germans are.
I know.
What are we to believe?
Well, as I say, on the market will prevail, and Europe has shown that it's prepared to almost say one thing while market-wise, things are being done differently.
It's extraordinary. Clive Moffat, as ever. Thank you. Final thought for me as we're talking about utilities. This is from me to Thames Water. Please stop writing to me. Please stop wasting your money. Please stop telling me that it is now urgent that I get a water meter. You explained in the first letter to me you want me to have a water meter because you want to manage demand. Well, that worries me. I feel that's more of a threat than a promise of a bright, happy future. Your last letter to me said, unless I have this water meter, you're going to put me on a different tariff. Well, I tell you what, Thames Water, when you stop the weekly, even bi-weekly, huge leaks of water occurring in roads all around my area, often leading to road closures, I might just think about it. Until then, stop wasting everyone's money, stop writing to me. Thank you very much indeed. In a moment, we'll look at another angle of the King's speech that took place on Christmas Day that nobody has yet even discussed.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons? I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here. You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8". My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
So your thoughts, are the energy providers literally robbing their customers? Well, lots and lots of feedback, unsurprisingly perhaps on this one. One viewer says, easiest question on planet Earth. Yes, yes, and yes. Paul says, of course we are. This is rip off Britain. At the end of the day, it's all about maximising profits for the shareholders at the expense of the consumers. Well, Paul, I have to say, I think Ofgem, I think it's exactly the role that they are playing. I don't know about rip off Britain. It's certainly broken Britain, literally wherever you look. Ali says, of course we are. And finally, another viewer says, yes, but just stop paying. Close your account, inform them you no longer need their services, and they go away. Well, yeah, I tell you what, whoever you are, you know, if you can manage without electricity, if you can manage without gas, then bully for you. But the truth is, most of us simply can't do that. OK, let's move on. I'm joined by Rafe Hadel-Manku. You were here with us all through as the nights when the crowds were queuing outside here to go and see the Queen's coffin, and you're a royal expert, and you've noticed something about the King's speech that nobody else has commented on. Rafe, tell us what it is.
Yes, so I thought the King gave an excellent speech, and for me, the nadir, the low point, came at the very beginning and the very end, when we had a mixed-sex choir at St George's Chapel, Windsor, singing the national anthem and the carol at the end. Now, why does that matter? Well, it's the first time in the 670-year history of St George's, Windsor, that you've had a mixed-sex choir. An English all-male choral tradition is part of our gift to world civilization, if I can put it like that. I'm a Catholic, but Catholics can't hold a candle to Anglican choral tradition. And at the core of its beauty is the fact that it's all male, men and boys, and together they produce a unique sound, and it's a sound most critics would say of matchless beauty. But for the last few years, woke bishops and woke deans have been vandalising this 900-year-old ceremony in the name of inclusion and equality.
But Rafe, I can hear people spitting feathers as you're saying all of this. We're living in a world of equality. What's wrong with you?
Well, this is just it. This is the same thing as having anybody can be an artist these days and get exhibited in galleries. When you are diminishing quality in the aspiration of equality, I think you've got a real problem here.
And your critics will say, no, he's wrong. The quality is exactly as good as it was before.
Well, anyone with an ear can listen and find the difference for themselves. I think there's no finer sound than the sound of an all-male choir at evensong, for example, and it's just such a tragedy that we're diminishing that. We had 11 such choirs in 2018. Now we only have 2 left, Westminster Abbey and King's College, Cambridge. St George's just went woke this year, and I think it's a tragedy to see.
Well, I have to say, Rafe, this is the only broadcast channel in this country that would get somebody on to give that opinion, but I'm pleased that you have. I have to say, I sort of half noticed it, but I just assumed perhaps we've been doing this now for a few years, but this was the first time you say that that had actually happened.
At St George's Chapel, Windsor, first time in 670 years.
How's the King doing?
Well, I think the King has done actually a very good job in this Christmas period in actually setting out his stall as sovereign. That's really what this Christmas speech is all about. You have to take this speech and his accession speech together because we're still in that period of transition between accession and coronation. This is all about cementing his role, putting his own modern stamp on the monarchy, renewing his bond with the people. And so I think, you know, if his mother was Elizabeth the Great, I really get the sense from these last 2 speeches he wants to be seen as Charles the Compassionate. Somebody really concerned about the welfare of the peoples in his kingdoms. That's why that speech, to me, you know, was full of kindness and empathy, humility, and comfort also. And I think that's something which, you know, I suppose is very much the spirit of Christmas.
I thought the fact that it's a Christian festival, that he celebrated that, but he said that, you know, all religions celebrate the triumph of light over darkness. I thought he got that right. I mean, he is actually playing the role of defender of the faith, isn't he?
Well, it's very tricky, yes. I mean, he wanted to really reaffirm that fact, that he understands, because of his critics criticising this point, that he is Supreme Governor of the Church of England and is self-consciously a Christian monarch. But yes, the more delicate part was actually trying to show that you can be simultaneously defender of the faith and defender of faiths. And, you know, and the monarchy has always been like that. So, you know, because we wouldn't have had an empire had we not been tolerant of other faiths. And from Victoria onwards, the Queen Emperor or the King Emperor ruled an empire where most people weren't Christian. They were Hindu and Muslim.
Yeah.
Now the empire's come home to roost, and the King understands, much like King Edward VII, who famously said, you know, he had many Jewish friends and was very pro-Catholic. He said, I am a king of all peoples, and I think the King has that too. But the important thing, the delicate thing here, is ensuring that you respect other faiths, but you really affirm the primacy of the Christian faith in Britain and of the established church in England and Scotland too.
Which I thought he did, actually. I mean, we had some criticism last night from David Starkey over his paean of praise for the public sector, particularly as some of them are actually going on strike, including the Royal College of Nursing, but we'll pass over that for now. Rafe, you've worked in the past as a government advisor. We're about to go into 2023. I see so few political differences now between the front benches of the Conservatives and the Labour Party. Shocking figures. You know, the homework's been done. It's in the House of Commons library, some well-established think tanks, the Resolution Foundation, etc. I mean, amazing, isn't it, that if you're a single parent with a couple of kids on $50,000 a year, if over the next decade your pay increases to $60,000 a year, you'll be £800 better off. People paying marginal tax rates, that's the way, that's not on all your income, folks, but being the last bit of it, marginal tax rates up into the 90%. What the hell are they thinking? Or aren't they?
And combine that with the dramatic decline in wages since 2008 in this country, comparable to the rest of the G7, it's an absolute tragedy. And you have to actually despair and think, what is the Conservative Party all about? You know, the highest tax rates since the Second World War. And the government has failed on defence. We have one of the smallest armies. The government has failed on immigration. The government has failed in reversing the long march through the institutions, failed on the BBC, failed to reform the civil service, failed to change our schools teaching critical race theory and gender theory. The one thing you thought you could rely on was sound economic management and low tax rates. Well, we know what they've done to the economy with quantitative easing, fueling inflation. But yes, here we go on the tax rate system. And the Labour Party have an open goal here. It's not actually antithetical for a progressive party to have low tax rates. JFK's Democrats in the 60s were opposed by the Republicans for their tax cuts. Of course, Blair and Brown, we've known marginally low tax rates compared to...
Yeah, and yesterday, Wes Streeting was out and about, you know, Shadow Cabinet Minister saying we will not increase taxes for the middle classes. Now, I think they'll go for non-doms and high earners, and that's a separate debate for another day. But yeah, I mean, the Labour Party economically now outflanking the Tories on the right.
Yeah, I think the problem with the Tories is they've seen some polling which shows that only 6% of the nation want to go for a Trussonomics type of hard cutting, and they want to appeal to the red wall, so they think that they need to have higher tax rates. But actually, that's just an assumption. No one's actually done the real graft work to see the people in the red wall are actually strivers who want to get ahead in life. And they're not just people looking for benefits and handouts and levelling up only.
No, I couldn't agree more. And finally, Rafe, I've been criticised in the Times and elsewhere for using the phrase, well, I'm fairly used to it, obviously, for using the phrase broken Britain, but that's how it feels to me.
I think this entire country is broken now. It's in a terribly desperate state. And you just have to think, it needs actually the death of the Conservative Party to have the revival of conservatism in this country.
Interesting
because there's no hope here otherwise.
Rafe, Haidel-Manku, as ever, thank you for coming on and giving us your very unique perspective. In a moment, we'll be joined by General Sir Richard Dannett down the line. The situation in Ukraine appears to be deteriorating in perhaps a very, very worrying way.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Just over 6 weeks ago, we saw Russian forces withdraw from Kherson and move back behind a very important strategic position. Hiding behind a river can be a very good place for an army to be. This was taken by almost the entirety of the British press as being a sign that Ukraine was making tremendous advances in this war. I compared it to a tactical retreat, not perhaps the same as the Hindenburg Line in 1917, but saying do not underestimate the determination of the Russians here. Well, We now see that in Kherson, Bakhmut and other cities, now they may be held by Ukraine, but they're coming under sustained shelling. Some of it, of course, is aimed at infrastructure, but inevitably there will be a significant number of civilian casualties. And we're now beginning to see Ukrainian civilians leaving Kherson and other areas. I have a really dark feeling about what Russia intends to do to those Ukrainian cities over the course of this winter. Am I right? Am I wrong? Well, former Chief of the General Staff, Lord Richard Dannett, joins me from Norfolk to discuss that very issue. Lord Dannett, is this the beginning of the classic Putin tactic of literally shelling towns and cities to the ground?
Well, he's been doing that really pretty much since the 24th of February, and his initial attack from Belarus to Kyiv failed. He's resorted to the Soviet-era tactic of massed artillery strikes to wear down defences and then move forward. But the situation around Kherson is particularly interesting. In your introduction, quite rightly, you said that we all celebrated what was obviously a Ukrainian success in recapturing Kherson. But from the Russian point of view, they'd got about 20,000 troops on the west side of the Dnipro River, and in serious danger of having those encircled, and frankly, they would have gone in the bag, they'd have been captured. So they did withdraw, and that was pretty sensible to do from their point of view. Now, situation, as you suggested, is the Russians have dug in, First World War style, on the east bank of the Dnipro River, and the Ukrainians control Kherson city. Unfortunately, the Russian lines are that close to the city that it's within artillery range. So, and we knew it was going to happen. The Russians are shelling Kherson on a daily routine basis and making life very difficult in that city. It was, after all, 300,000 in population. It went down to some 70,000, and now people are leaving, and you can't blame them for leaving. But this is not the determinant move of the war. This is a very difficult situation around the southern front, around Kherson. I mean, if the Ukrainians wanted to, but of course they couldn't, they could mount an assault river crossing across the Dnipro River, 200, 300 meters wide, and that would fail. That is not the right thing to do. What they've got to do at some point in the not too distant future is mount another counter-offensive elsewhere in the country.
Yes, as you say, attacking across a river likely to be a very dangerous, expensive operation. There are, I mean, clearly no prospect, no realistic prospect of peace talks of any kind. And it's very difficult, I know, to give predictions. But it feels to me, although, this whole situation could go on for many years.
Well, yes, I mean, I'm just picking up my crystal ball, and I'm not sure whether my crystal ball is any better than your crystal ball, Nigel. But I think my take on the situation is that inevitably it's winter. The war of movement has literally gone into the deep freeze. Yes, we're seeing shelling of the civilian population in Kherson. We're seeing a very determined Russian attack by drone on Ukrainian power infrastructure. And that'll be a failed attempt to try and undermine the Ukrainian population's will to continue. It won't work. We've got two Ukrainian people living with us, and they're quite clear, in touch with their father in Ukraine. The morale of the Ukrainian people remains very high. So what we're going to see at some point in the late winter, early spring, the Russians having mobilized a lot of additional troops, poorly trained, terribly equipped, clothing terrible. They will try and mount another offensive. I'm happy to say at this stage, I'm almost certain on the evidence presented, it will fail. Now, that is the moment that the Ukrainians, with the benefit of Western arms, ammunition, the training we've been giving them, there have been 10,000 Ukrainians being trained in this country to be combat infantrymen, with the capability that they've built up. When the Russian offensive in a few weeks, months to come fails, as I'm sure it will, that's the moment for the Ukrainians to mount a really vigorous counter-offensive in the same way that they did around Kharkiv in September, and really push the Russians back. And you know, if they are able to strike decisive blows, I think the morale of the Russian army, their conscripts, their recently mobilised people is so brittle that they may well collapse, and this is the moment for the battlefield to change, the dynamics of the campaign to change, and that's the moment, not now, that's the moment that negotiations could start. Because remember, President Zelensky has said he wants the whole of Ukraine back in Ukrainian hands. So he's not going to negotiate anything less than that. Putin, on the other hand, has got to get something out of this. So at this precise moment, their negotiating positions are impossible. What's got to change is the battlefield. And I think the Ukrainians, over time, in the next few months, could well change the battlefield. That'll change the dynamics of the whole war.
Lord Danner, thank you very much indeed for your thoughts, your views on this situation. Thank you. Whatever happens, there will be a lot more loss of life. The BBC, yes, the BBC, they've just spent £7 million of your money modernising, updating. Yes, they've been to a couple of design shops and they've got some new logos. Let me put those up on the screen for those that are watching on television. Those of you listening on radio have really the benefit of this one because they are so sort of ugly cuboid structures. Goodness only knows how all of that cost £7 million. But that's the BBC. They just want to be modern and trendy, but they failed with this one. In a moment on Talking Pints, a man who banned the BBC from Leeds United Football Club. Former owner of Chelsea and many other football clubs, Ken Bates joins me in just a moment.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dubes & Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Dubes & Kerr.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
It's time for Talking Pints. I'm joined tonight by a man who's an entrepreneur. He's owned many football clubs. Always spoken his mind, never shied away from controversy. It is Ken Bates who joins me on Talking Pints. Ken.
Good evening, Nigel.
Absolute pleasure to have you on the programme. Now tell me.
Nice to meet one of my heroes.
Well, thank you. That's a good start, isn't it? How does a guy who comes from pretty modest circumstances and not an easy start in life, how do you go out there and create the money, the ideas to lead to all the other things that you've done?
Well, first of all, I've had my share of luck. That's something the bankrupt blames and the millionaire never acknowledges. I'm a good listener. You only learn when you listen.
Good listener, I like that. Yeah.
Well, you only learn when you listen.
Yeah.
And as Elton John once famously said years ago, he recounting his humble beginnings, how much do you want it? And one of my granddaughters actually did that in a box. And as you walk into the apartment, it's standing at how much do you want it?
And that wanting it a lot, did that mean that you just worked hard, you kept trying different things?
I was nosy, I was inquisitive, I wanted to learn. And I was lucky. I mean, I had a damn good state education, grammar school. This is before the war, Second World War, not the First World War. And then I was interested in economics. And in those days, they didn't do university degrees in it, that kind of stuff. And I wasn't interested in what was on offer, even assuming I made it. So I left, and I got a job in local government, which is the civil service.
Yep.
And I was lucky again because they just introduced a sort of apprenticeship scheme. So instead of going to one job, they moved you all the way around. So I had 3 months at this department, 3 months at that. And of course I was a kid. So I was the one that opened the post, took the telephone calls, read the post, listened over the telephone calls, listened to the seniors talking, and I sort of soaked up. I learned a lot.
Yeah, and on to business and making money. And...
Well, I got to 18 and couldn't stand this anymore. So, of course, nowadays it was national service, 2 years, and I applied for 3 years. I thought, I'm not going 3 years and then get the regular army. See the world at King's expense. See the world at King's expense. But I filed for medical, and I got one of these cards that says I'd only be caught 3C, I think it was, only be called up in the state of war. I thought, well, I'm not bugger that. I'm not going back to the local council. So I got a job in British Railways, British Region. It was for 7 weeks. There's a week to find out what it was like. 9 weeks, sorry. Week to find out what it was like, 7 weeks to find another job, and a week to serve me notice. And in the end, don't trust statistics, because my job was to make them up as they went along.
But you got into haulage and all sorts of things and did well. But this obsession with football that has, seen you as a public figure, for decade after decade after decade.
All I ever wanted to be was a footballer, a professional footballer.
Yeah.
I mean, cut long story short, I was born a cripple, and I had 8 operations on my right foot, thanks to Great Ormondley Hospital, for which I'm always grateful. But being born, with your instep, it's when you direct the ball. If you've got a club foot, it's like it goes anywhere. So I had to train myself to kick with my left foot, which was handy because there's always a shortage of left-footed players. So that helped me a bit. And Saturday morning you played for the school, Saturday afternoon you played for your club, and Sunday morning it was a free-for-all in the local park. It was just football. And it got in my blood.
So you start off, you don't make it as a professional player, but you decide now that buying football clubs, running football clubs is going to be your thing.
That came a little bit later. I met my father when I was 20, which isn't quite as bad as it sounds. And he was a lorry driver, broke his wrist, and he had a sister, which I didn't meet again until I was 20, and me, and he couldn't cope, so got passed on. But he was a lorry driver, then he had a small lorry business. He did the Bates aggregates in Harlington, opposite the police station. And then we met each other and we got on, and he said, come and work with me. So I did. But I learned 3 questions when I was a kid, 8, 9-year-old, with my head through Buckingham Palace railings on a Sunday morning, watching the change room. Why not, and what for? The 3 easiest questions to ask. 3 most difficult questions to get an answer.
Well, I'm going to ask you those questions back because, you know, you've been involved with Wigan, Oldham. Chelsea Football Club comes up for sale for £1. It's got debt. It's got terrible problems. What made you think you could turn Chelsea round?
Well, I bought Oldham in 1965.
Yeah.
And I sold it when I went to the Virgin Islands. And then when I came back, a mate of mine, Freddie Pye, was a scrap merchant, metal merchant in Manchester, and Bobby Charlton, who were great friends. They bought Wigan, and they asked me to go in with them, and I said no. So Fred said, why not? I said, well, without being unkind, I can't see Bobby Charlton putting much money in the club, his reputation. And you, Fred, you spend money like water and then sure somebody will provide it. I'm staying out. Well, they got in trouble, so I took over Wigan and sorted them out. But then I was dealing with another business deal. Somebody played a great part in my life. And the accountant who was dealing with that was also running Chelsea. They brought him in his unofficial administration. He said he would fancy buying Chelsea. So, cut long story short, we did the deal on a Friday night, no publicity. Yeah, pay £1. They needed £300,000. I'll try not to make it too long, but basically, Chelsea just played Tottenham. And in those days, it was 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 the gate, 1/3 going the away club, 1/3 being shared out among the world. And so they issued 2 cheques, and Barclays had enough. They rang up and said, we've got 2 cheques here, about the same amount, which one shall we bounce? Well, if they bounced the FA cheque, all hell let loose, so they bounced the wages cheque. That's why we sat round on the Friday night. And David Mears turned around and said, oh, we can't finish this tonight. Why don't you put your money in now and we'll sort it next week? I said, if you think I'm going to put 300,000 quid into the hands of somebody who's got, you're a bigger name than I think you are. Well, so we did the deal. We did the deal. And then Lord Chelsea, now the Earl of Cadogan, I think, said to me, would you like to be my guest tomorrow at the ground club? And me, being a peasant and knowing my place, said, that's very kind of you, my lord. Thank you very much. The fact that I own the club. And anyway.
Can you, I mean, listen, time is never on our side, but you showed great patience with Chelsea, because it took time, but by the late 90s, you're winning FA Cups, you're doing amazingly.
Yeah, with the 80s were the time of fighting everybody in sight.
But that's the other quality, isn't it? You talked about luck, you talked about being a good listener, but patience clearly is an important quality.
How much you want it?
And you did it, and you sold it to Abramovich. You go off to Leeds, you ban the BBC. Why did you ban the BBC from Leeds?
Well, up north, the BBC looked north.
Yeah.
They had a potty little studio somewhere in Leeds, and the guy was so obviously anti-me, and you know what the BBC's like.
Yeah, I know, but I know better than anybody what the BBC.
I don't need to tell you, do I?
No, you don't need to tell me for one moment. And football now, you look at, all these years, your great passion, Americans buying.
It's not the game that I bred into and brought up on. You know, I mean, in my days, you won things. Now you buy them.
And you're talking about the money being pumped into Man City or whatever else it may be.
No, Manchester United was the first one.
Yeah.
But now you've got Man United, Man City, Everton, Liverpool.
Yeah.
Arsenal.
Yeah.
I think Aston Villa, Chelsea.
Yeah. You've got the Saudis buying up Newcastle. But then the Premier League is seen to be a global event.
Well, it should be for people abroad, around the world watching.
Yeah.
But it's an English game. And again, we haven't got time, but basically, football originated from villages. You know, Sheffield United, Sheffield Wednesday.
Yeah.
And most of them were started by churches. For example, Queen's Park Rangers was originally St Jude's Institute. And when I formed my first football club, it was St Mellitus Football Church. We had the football club in. But, and you had this loyalty.
Yeah, it's now money,
Tom Finney,
money.
Fantastic, Tom Finney.
But it is what it is,
Yeah,
Ken.
he never played for one club.
But it is what it is, Ken. And England, you know, we got to the final of the Euros last year. We had a run in the World Cup. English football's not in a bad place, is it?
I think it is. If you go quickly to America, they have, I think, about 5 national games. And each of them compete in each of the games. They have about 10 clubs in a league, no promotional relegation. And all those clubs owned by wealth management companies. And to them, a football club.
Yeah.
It's just another...
It's a commodity.
No,
Yeah.
just another commodity.
Yeah. No, listen, Ken, I get that. I understand that. Well, you've given a lot of people a lot of entertainment over many, many years. I mean, I certainly remember growing up, you know, and into early adulthood, Ken Bates all over the back pages and sometimes the front pages as well.
Okay, very quickly on that. When I first came into football, it was really, you only got your news from the newspapers.
Yeah, that's right.
And they were written by journalists.
Yeah.
And they were written often without even checking the facts.
Yeah. Yes.
Now
But the internet's no better.
I put them right.
Ken, we're out of time. You're never afraid of putting people right or giving your opinion. Thank you for coming on and being a great guest. I'm done for today. I'm back with you tomorrow at 7 o'clock. Right now, I'm going to hand you over to Patrick Christys.
Wow, what an absolute cracker of a show that was, Nigel. You've got to love Ken on the telly. Right, there's loads to come your way. I'm filling in for the wonderful Mark Stein. I'm reliably informed that he is on the mend. You'll be pleased to know. We're getting stuck right into the Prevent scheme at the top. Is the true extent of radical Islamism in the UK being hidden from us in some kind of epic government cover-up? We will discuss that. The NHS, is it... some kind of sacred cow, or is it just a fatted calf? Does it actually need saving? Will it cost us far too much to save it? And how do we end wokeism once and for all? I get stuck right into that yet again with Charlie Peters. Loads to talk about tonight, 8 till 9 p.m. I will see you there after your weather.
Hello there, I'm Claire Nazir with your weather update. It's a lively night into Thursday morning with rain, showers, some clearer skies, strong winds and also some hill snow. Now, all courtesy of an area of low pressure. To the south of that, that's where we've seen the coastal gales overnight as that weather front stalls across the far north of Scotland and rain will return to the northwest. So overnight, a lot of wet weather around. A batch of showers will merge to form a longer spell of wet weather across northern England, Wales, the West Country pushing ever eastwards as more rain returns to the central belt, western parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland through the early hours of the morning. A cold start in the north, relatively mild further south, but showers never too far away. However, through the morning there will be some sunshine around central and eastern areas of England. Further showers will clear northern England and this mass of showery rain will move from Northern Ireland, western Scotland towards the east. Now, across England and Wales, the most frequent bursts will be down towards the southwest, where we'll see the odd heavier one, but the winds won't be as strong as Wednesday. Even so, these showers could be heavy, some sunshine in between. Temperatures not as high either. Now through Thursday evening, we'll see a lot of those showers ease. Could even see the risk of some ice across the far northeast of Scotland as rain returns to Northern Ireland. This rain is heavy. In fact, the Met Office has issued a warning for heavy rain across central and southern parts of Scotland into Friday. Again, the risk of some snow over the higher ground as thickening cloud on Friday brings further spells of wet weather towards Wales, the West Country, as the winds pick up some strength. So let's have a look at that rain as it tracks across England and Wales. More rain across Scotland and Northern Ireland, clearing Northern Ireland later on in the day, feeling cold in that wind under all that cloud. And here's your outlook into the New Year weekend. We lose the strength of the wind, we gain some drier skies, but always the chance of some rain in the southeast on Sunday.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons? I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton Tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless, and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. B, I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.